Good morning. Are you ready for Holy Week Day 4 of our LIBS tour? I'm hoping it is liberating for all of us who are in quarantine to hear these stories of Holy Week. But LIBS stands for I Land Illustrated Biblical Storytelling Tour. I'm telling the stories of Holy Week and showing you the pictures of Holy Land where it all took place. Today's story takes place on the Mount of Olives, and here are some olive trees here on this Mount of Olives. Jesus is sort of taking the day off. He's been to the temple 3 times and he's had a lot going on, so he is just sort of relaxing on the Mount of Olives. And it says that he is on the Mount of Olives opposite of the temple. So his view would have been something like this. This is now the view of Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. But if you look at that, the in the right middle, the gold dome there is the Church of the Rock, Dome of the Rock, but it would have been the temple in Jesus' time. So if we have the view here and the Mount of Olives here, that's where a lot of the conversation happens in today's story. Now, there's also a couple sections that have to do with the chief priests. I don't know where they are, but I will show this picture of the model city, the temple in the model city, where maybe those chief priests were hanging out. But the favorite part of my story today happens in Bethany. And in Bethany, there is this church of Lazarus. If you remember that Lazarus was the one that Jesus brought back to life, and that's the mosaic above the altar. But along the side also is this mosaic of what happened today's story. It also happened in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper. And it's a little hard to see this mosaic, but I'll make it a little bigger and put a spotlight on Jesus and the woman that came with the alabaster jar. And then there's also conversations among the disciples, and when I put a spotlight on them, Judas comes into focus there. Doesn't really say it's Judas that does the talking, but he is mentioned in the next verse, and so tradition has it that it is Judas that does the talking there. So let's go to that Mount of Olives, and it's the whole 13th chapter of Mark that has to do with the conversation that Jesus has with his disciples on the Mount of Olives. I'm only going to do the first part, verses 3 through 8, and then I'll pick up that conversation at the end, verse 31, and go through chapter 14, verse 11. Now, I want to remind you of what the last words were of yesterday's story, as Jesus is coming out of the temple and the disciples are marveling at the beautiful temple and the big buildings. Then Jesus says, yes, but the day will come when they're all thrown down, all these stones. So that must be ringing in the disciples' mind, and they're wondering, tell me a little bit more about when that day will come. So hear now this conversation on the Mount of Olives. When Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew asked him privately, when will all this be? And what will be a sign that all these things are about to be accomplished? And Jesus began to talk to them, saying, beware that no one lead you astray. For many will come in my name and say, I am he, and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars or rumors of wars, do not be alarmed, for these must happen, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise up against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be earthquakes in various places and famine and troubles of many kinds. But these are but the beginnings of the birth pangs. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But as for the day or the hour, no one knows, not the angels in heaven or the Son, only the Father. But beware, keep alert, for no one knows when the time will come. It's like a man who goes on a trip, and as he leaves his home, he puts his servants in charge, each with their work to do, and he commands the doorkeeper to keep watch, to be on the lookout. For no one knows when the master of the house will come. Keep alert, for he may come in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn, or else you will be asleep when the master of the house comes. For no one knows when the time comes. I say to you, as I say to all, keep awake. Now it is now the 2 days before the festival of the Passover and the unleavened bread, and the chief priests and the scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, not during the festival, lest there be a riot of the people. And Jesus was in Bethany, at the home of Simon the leper. And while he was at table, a woman came with an alabaster jar of ointment, pure nard, very costly. And she broke the jar and poured the ointment on Jesus' head. But some were there who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was this ointment wasted? Why, it could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her. And Jesus said to them, "Why are you troubling her? Let her alone. She has done a beautiful thing for me. You will have the poor with you always, and whenever you wish, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me." She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. Then Judas Iscariot went out. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went out to the chief priest and made arrangements to betray Judas to them. And when they heard it, they were exceedingly pleased, and they promised to give him money. So Judas began to look for an opportunity to betray Jesus to them. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
I hope you will tune in tomorrow, for we begin tomorrow what's called the Passion. It's the story of what happened those holy days. Tell other people to look as well, for this is the most important stories of all, tomorrow and the next day. Then we kind of take a day off, and then there's the great day. See you tomorrow. Bye.